Hey guys, this is John, and I'm playing Professor Smith in the 5-minute pool on ICC. He opens with knight f3. Let's play g6 in response to that. I don't recognize this player, but they are a Grandmaster. Looks like they're just adopting a flank strategy. He actually says in the chat, "Am I being streamed?" I'll say, nope, just recorded. There is a difference between streaming and recording. Okay, let's just play knight f6 here. We'll castle as well, so symmetric position so far. I can play c6 or c5. c6 a little more passive, but I can play d5 after that, and we get kind of a Slav-Grunfeld hybrid, so I feel a bit more comfortable with that type of setup, so I'll go down that path. Okay, now knight f3. You know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to take that before they get a chance to play knight bd2. So I'm giving up my light square bishop, but as you often see me do, I'm going to arrange my pawns on light squares like this. And I think I will play for a trade of the dark square bishops too, just so he can't claim to have the bishop pair. I'm very curious who this player is now. Let's just take first. And I think I'll play knight d6. The knight seems well placed on this square. b4 advances. a5 is probably okay if I want to try to undermine that pawn. If a5, c5, though, where am I putting my knight? I could also just take on c4. If I take on c4, they'll take with their knight. So I think they're going to try to gain a bunch of space, is their argument here. Let's play a5. I think this is probably the right way to go. Again, I know they can play c5 in response to this, but I'll move my knight probably here. Okay, they're just going to play it solid, a3. Let's look for a swap of the queens. I don't know how well placed my knight is on f6. Probably not so much, but they take that way. Surprising. I'll take with the e-pawn, definitely. I want to keep that c-file closed. Okay, and they're angling for the c5 square. They want to make use of that. Probably I got to take. I could play a4, though. a4, knight c5. Actually, I have b6 there. That traps the knight. Yeah, doesn't it? There's nowhere the knight can go. All right, it's a little unusual, but I'll do that. They can go to d4. Okay. Knight d7 now. Reposition. I feel like they want to get b5 in eventually. I actually would really like to trade this piece. Knight b5 doesn't work out too well, though. I get doubled pawns. Maybe knight f5. Do I really want that structure, though? I'm not completely certain about that. Okay, I'm going to play rook a6 and try to put the rook on b6. Okay, let's just play rook e8 for now. They just played kind of a slow move. I think they're going to put this bishop on e2. It doesn't have much to do on that diagonal anymore. It's well blocked by pawns. So probably they're going to go bishop e2, maybe move the knight, play d4 eventually. I think they'd love to achieve b5. Just as I said that, they do it. Okay. Yeah. I thought I was preventing this move, but obviously not. So take. Rook c7. Infiltrate. If knight e5, bishop takes d5, I'm going to have trouble holding them off. So I think knight f6 should be played, but I don't like rook takes b7. My pawn is in danger. Don't like many of my options here. Rook d6. All right, I'm going to try this. They can take b7. I play knight c5. They take b5. I take d3. They take d5 at the end. At least I get some activity there. Interesting way of handling that. Okay, rook b8. Wow, I'm way down on time. All right, got to send the knight into c4. Try to. You can take d5. I take a3. Okay, so let's do that.
Check.
Bishop takes f7. Let's go this way. Take. Let's get behind this pawn. Our a pawn is our only hope. Otherwise, we're pretty much in trouble in the face of these advancing pawns. Okay, let's come here.
Check.
He's going to go win that one, I guess. Okay, at least we get a knight b4.
Check.
Not sure why he did that. I guess he just wants to push our king a little ways away. Boy, that knight's an awkward piece. Okay, let's come here. Yeah, I'm down a boatload of pawns. He's probably going to win the a pawn too, eventually. Better go king here. Yeah, now he's just starting to advance.
Check.
Knight d6. I'll try to get something going with the knight. The thing I'm worried about, he could even eventually sack the bishop for my a pawn, and I still might lose. At least now I have knight e4 or knight b5
Check.
coming. There's a possibility. Okay, let's do this. This is like my only shot, trying to arrange knight c3. It's kind of transparent, though. I guess he can go rook c8
Check.
and try to guard that. Okay. Is he coming over with this rook? Go take that last pawn? Maybe, maybe not. Okay, let's come here.
Check.
Okay, let's do this, and then I can push a2 next move, at least. That's a lot of pawns, though. He's got a billion pawns advancing at me. Okay, a2. Get this in. Still got a billion pawns advancing at me. Gotta try this, at least. I don't know. I'm running out of time, too, to consider what to do. He actually is letting me get back in time. Maybe not.
Time warning.
Maybe not. I think I'm losing. Yeah, king f6. That's the killer move. Now e7. Yep. Okay. Well, I made it interesting there at the end. Yeah, strong player, 25-11. Just going to check who this player is. Anonymous. Anonymous Grandmaster. Yeah, that scenario kind of played out the way that I somewhat predicted. Like, they give up material, but they have so many pawns on the king side just, like, mobbing me that my a pawn, despite being dangerous and even queening in some lines, they can just sack for the newly made queen or the pawn when it's on a2 and just win the game. Maybe I had something here. I don't know. I tried to rush my king back. That's, when you're in these situations, when you have a rook versus a bunch of your opponent's pawns, your only chance is to try to rush your king back and coordinate with your rook to try to stop those pawns, especially if they're connected pawns. Otherwise, you're going down in flames every time. So, not a great game by me, but I think I played okay in stretches. I don't know. This position looked crucial when I played a5 and he responded with knight b3. Maybe I should just trade. That does give white a isolated b pawn. Not sure that pushing the knight to the d4 square was all that great. I had it in mind that they wanted to play knight c5, but that may not be white's intention. Maybe they had their eyes on d4 where it supports b5 all along. Let's go back and take a look. So I played g6 on move 1, but it kind of morphed into a setup that I'm a little more comfortable with. c5 can be played here. We have a symmetrical English if that happens. Usually white will try to arrange d4 hereafter, but I just decided to play it in Grunfeld-Slav hybrid style. So this weakens the diagonal. I could look at moving the knight, like knight e4 or something, but that's easily enough dealt with by white, just d4, and blocks the attack on the rook. So hence I played d5, bishop b2, bishop f5, d3. Yeah, and I took. This looks unusual just to voluntarily trade the bishop for the knight, but I think now is a good time to do it if I am going to do it, because if I play something like knight bd7, they go knight bd2, then always they could recapture with this knight, and it might be better placed than it would be on d2. So when I'm playing bishop g4, especially when you're Fee and Ket out on this side of the board, you're pretty much making a decision to trade for that knight, because imagine if white plays like h3, you can't retreat the bishop to h5 as you normally might consider because they have g4. That's why when you're fiend kettled on one side of the board and you develop your bishop to that same side, you're often just a little more committed to taking that knight. You don't want to get your piece trapped like this. So I just did it right away, got it over with, and then started arranging my pawns on light squares like that. Yeah, so this maneuver I've used in an OTB game, playing knight e8 to d6 and enforcing the trade a couple times, actually. The engine indicates a small advantage for white. That doesn't seem out of the question. I mean, white does have a bishop and knight versus my two knights. The position is very close, so that's not a big factor right now, but should the position open up, that light square bishop in particular could be valuable for white. And I think he did the right thing. He started advancing on the queen side here, pushing the b pawn. I didn't want to let white just have their way with me on the queen side, so that's why I played a5 and tried to strike back a little bit. And it's nice to do that when this pawn is defended. So in the event that white takes, I don't have to be concerned about queen takes b7 to follow. Granted, they could play c5 and push me away. I thought that's what they might do. And then I was looking at knight f5. Here, if they took, I might have to take a moment to defend that pawn. Maybe not. Okay, because queen takes, I'm on this knight on d2. If they take here, knight takes c5 even. Okay. And if they take here, rook c8 probably, rook f c8, and white has issues. Queen's under attack and the knight is hanging, and we're defending c5. But they just stabilized their structure with a3. I proposed a queen trade, which white took. So why have I now equalized as opposed to that slight disadvantage we were seeing a few moves ago? It's probably because of a5 and white responding with a3. Also, getting the queens off the board makes it a little easier for me to maneuver within my camp. I don't have to worry about white's queen on that long diagonal. So I think the trades, also the fact that I got that pawn move in, gained a little space, that's maybe what's brought this eval a little closer to 0. And then he took. So I didn't want to take this way because I felt like white's rook would have free reign on the c file for now. But maybe that's okay. If rook c7, this knight is so well placed on d6, it just defends the pawn, so it's not a big deal. Oh, and also I can take this way, and white is even pinned down the a file. So possibly I should have considered c takes d5 closer. I thought e takes was fine, though. Often when white does do this capture, black will take this way. You obtain an open e file in the process. And you keep a nice chain blocking that light square bishop. Yeah, and this is one moment I singled out as perhaps an important decision, and the engine says I should take on b4. Take, and then just king g7 or knight d7. Knight d7, okay, so addressing knight c5. Yeah. White could still try this plan and eventually going here, but maybe this is an improved version for me. Let's see, if b5 plays c5, push past, attack the knight, okay. And white doesn't have time to chop off the d5 pawn. That said, I mean, a4 should be fine too. I mean, I think it will work out similarly. This move might be dubious, especially in conjunction with knight d7. Yeah, rook a6 looks kind of like a junky move. The engine just says just wait, play king g7, get your king off the back rank a little bit closer to the center. It looks a little more comfortable for white. I was hoping that the a3 pawn might be weak in the long run, like if ever this knight moves like knight b5 and I'm kind of eyeing that pawn on a3, but that turned out to be an illusion. So rook a6, they played king g2. I just played rook e8, e3. Yeah, now I started maneuvering with this knight, but that's a big mistake. That allows a lot of play after b5. So I took my eye off the ball, and my knight, which was defending d5, is maneuvered. It kind of makes sense to move this piece because looking at the knight's possibilities, they're not huge on this f6 square, but I just chose the wrong moment to do it. Maybe I should play rook b6 first and better guard against the possibility of b5. Still a little worse. Bishop d1, they can reposition the bishop and take a look at that pawn. Yeah, when I pushed a4 way back when, that was double-edged because, yes, I fixed this pawn on a3, but I make this pawn a target too, and it can't easily be supported by b5, because if ever I play b5, c6 becomes chronically weak, if not just immediately captured. So knight d7, b5, and it was very tough from here. And he had played pretty quickly up to this point as well, so I tried to stop the bleeding, but the position is opening up. He didn't even play to get his pawn back immediately, just rook c7, attacking this, d5 is still hanging. So I'm on the defensive now, having to choose which of my weak points I try to defend. d4, that was a strong move. Top move of the engine. Yeah, d4, just blocking any play I have with d4. And look how white is complementing their bishop. So they've got all these pawns on dark squares, complementing that light square bishop very well. It's not blocked in by any of those pawns. So the engine wants me to go b4, take, and then b5. That's interesting. So in that way, I protect the a pawn. It's a protected passed pawn now. All of my pawns are on light squares, though, which in this circumstance is probably bad because that presents this bishop with many juicy targets. Sometimes that's good. Like if those pawns are able to be defended, then they function as a way to block out that bishop. But here, they're more just weaknesses because it's hard for me to keep an eye on every single one of them. That's why chess advice is confusing, because like in some circumstances, playing strictly by the book, by the conventional advice will work. But in other times like this, you have to recognize when that rule cannot be followed. So here I regret the fact that I put all my pawns on light squares, because as it turned out, they are just weak on these squares. Yeah, rook b8, not a fun move to have to play. I like the look of that b4 suggestion, though. I wish I would have done that. I'm just going to see if I had any chances from here. White was just increasing their advantage. Maybe this move doesn't help. In Blitz especially, when you're on the defensive, you're always going to strive for activity. There's not many Blitz players that will just sit there in a worse position and try to defend, just try to batten down the hatches and hold. So like playing knight c4 to me seemed entirely natural, going after the a-pawn, trying to drum something up. But according to the computer, that makes my position twice as worse. I have a 1.5 point deficit right now, and I immediately increase that to 3 points or more. So yes, this move is bad, but I think it's a human type of mistake and a move you would play in Blitz. The engine says play rook c6 instead, looking for a trade. In doing that, if white does trade, then my knight is magically defended by the rook on b8. And I'm still a lot worse here. Rook b4. Material is even, but two weaknesses. A bishop with more potential than my knight. Still uphill for black. I'm in this pin on the b file. Not fun. So knight c4, and white just started chopping pawns.
Check.
I won the a pawn, but white got a lot of material in exchange for having to deal with this slight annoyance. Rook a6, important to get behind that pawn, because if I don't, they might play rook a7 and take up residence there.
Check.
They grab the h-pawn.
Check.
I'm pretty sure white had a better way to convert this. I mean, I was surely lost at various points in this ending. I don't think they had to let it get as far as it did, but you could see he was playing very fast and confidently and barely even flinched when he had to give up that rook in the resulting ending. Okay, so my play is going downhill. I'm minus 4.5 right now. This move makes it minus 8. But it's almost the same thing. I'm lost either way, so
Check.
at least this way I tried to activate my knight.
Check.
There might have been a glimmer of hope when I felt like my knight was getting in to attack this bishop. I thought here they could even play a move like rook c8 and just guard against knight c3, and I'm not going anywhere, I don't think.
Check.
So this happened. I get in knight c3 finally. f3. Okay, well,
Check.
that's a pretty big jump. Now it's getting a little closer. Bishop takes d5, king takes d5. White has to go back with the rook. King c4. Rook a1, a2. Now white played h5. So this isolates the h-pawn when I take it. I wonder if they could have kept all of these pawns together. So that's a chain that, when it starts advancing, is just unstoppable. Might not matter, though. Yeah, h5 is still a good move according to the engine. Take, take. I played king b3. I can't take the pawn because they eliminate a2 and they'll win up 3 pawns. So unfortunately, I have to drag my king very far away from the field of action, where white's pushing these pawns in order to eventually win white's rook. As I said, I was just holding out hope that maybe I could somehow stop these pawns. Okay, king g5. And this was incorrect. I had to play rook h8, really, and then it's a draw. The computer finds it right away at depth 35 or 36. But with 30 seconds on my clock to my opponent's 2.5 minutes, and I'm facing 3 connectors, not good chances I hold from here. White's play is very easy. Just advance the pawns in unison. So rook a6 loses. Let's see why rook h8 draws, though. So rook h8. I'll just follow the engine line. d5. You know, when you're advancing connected pawns, it's usually best to advance them together. You don't want to let one pawn get too far in front of the other. Here, it probably doesn't matter. But like d5, the top move of the engine, makes perfect sense because now I have to think about like both pawns advancing, and I can't just focus on stopping one of the pawns. Also, the pawns can protect each other as they come up the board. The king is also in the vicinity of the pawns, but the pawns can even help each other. If these pawns get 1 square further up each, then they're in a position where a rook has no chance to stop them. A rook really can't stop them as is here, especially with the king close, but 1 square further advanced, e6, d6, and I'm just totally done for. So you see, black has to get their king back. That's my only way to try to save this. Okay, d6, king c4, d7. Yeah, because here, if white tries to do that, then I get king d5 in, and I will win one of the pawns. And actually, black wins here. I'm just going to win one of them, and so falls the other one. The f-pawn is not far enough advanced to make a difference. So black wins in that case. So king c4, d7, king c5. This move is way more natural. Okay, let's go with king d5, king f6, king c6. If king e7, I have check followed by winning the pawn, so e6, king c7. This also looks really dicey still, but I guess I'm in a position where I might be able to bring my king in. So king here. Now if white got several more moves, they would just push the f-pawn down the board, queen it, and win. But I can give them checks. And since they do not want to allow king d8, like king f6, king d8, then probably they would go here, check, and it's looking like a perpetual and a draw. So rook h8 is different from what I played, rook laterally, over to wherever I put it, a6, because in this way I actually control one of the queening squares. And that might buy me enough time to bring my king up. Compare it to the game, so I played rook a6 in the game. f4, yeah, they advanced the furthermost pawn. They could try that in the other line too, like if rook h8 was played, rook h8, f4. But I think my king gets back in time. Yeah, and this rook is just better placed than on a6. It wasn't doing anything on a6. It's just kind of observing the pawns as they pass the demarcation line of the 6th rank. h8, it actually could control a queening square, so that's probably why it's better. Yeah, and well played by him to realize that pushing the f-pawn was the best thing to do. Furthest away from my king, f6, f7. Yep, now I got to stop the pawn, so rook a8 is forced, and king f6. This is shouldering. That's shouldering 101. Shouldering is where you use your king in a way to keep the opposing king out. So compare king f6 to king g6. King g6 is much weaker because that allows king e6, and now I might be in a position to stop that pawn. King g7, yeah, even rook a7 going after this. Whereas king f6, white still makes a forward move up the board, but simultaneously stops my king from coming here. And that's why it wins. Now my king can't assist in the defense. I really have nothing to do. As you see, it's just plus a million for white. I grabbed a pawn on d4, hoping to reduce the material, but these pawns are too far advanced. Yeah, and white wins. Okay, so kind of a detailed analysis of this endgame, but I find these endgames fascinating when you have these race scenarios. And oftentimes it's rook versus several pawns. And I've been in this situation many times in games, and if you've played a lot of chess, you will have too, where it's a rook endgame, and one side has a runaway pawn, like I did, that's very far advanced, and the opponent has to at some point give up the rook for it, and then they have to scramble back with their king, like I tried to do, to stop the other pawns. So you get into these cool race scenarios where sometimes the rook prevails, sometimes the mess of pawns prevails. So hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll be back again tomorrow with another one. So thanks for watching, guys. Bye.